place where we have changed who we are. Now, I mentioned to all of you that when I was serving in Iraq, I was hit by the suicide truck bomb. I was fine. I was taken to the Fallujah Surgical Hospital. I was treated there. 72 hours later, I was able to return to full duty. My friend Joel, who I mentioned to you, Joel ended up having a severe head injury. He was casualty evacuated all the way back to the United States. When I came home, I came back to visit Joel, and I also went to Bethesda to the Naval Hospital to visit with some recently returned wounded Marines. Now, I know that many of you have had the opportunity to visit with some recently returned wounded soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines when they have come home. And if you have, you will know that you walk into one of those hospital rooms, you're often talking with a young man or woman, often in their early to mid-20s. And you can, as I did, we talked a little bit about their units, talked about their hometowns, I asked them a little bit about what was happening on their deployments. And then when I said to each one of them, when I said, tell me what do you want to do when you recover? Every single one of them said to me, I want to return to my unit. They all said, I want to return to my unit. Now, the reality was for the men and women who I was visiting that day is that they were not going to be able to return to their unit. One of them had lost both of his legs. Another lost the use of his right arm, part of his right lung. Another lost a good part of his hearing. So I said to each one of them, and I wasn't thinking about the lesson from the 10-mile time run at that point, but I just said to each one, I said, tell me, if you can't return to your unit right away, tell me what else you'd like to do. And every single one of them told me that they wanted to find a way to continue to serve. They didn't necessarily use the word service. One of them said, you know, I had a rough childhood growing up, and I'd like to find a way, maybe I could go home and become a football coach or a mentor. Another one said, you know what, I was thinking that I might go home, go back to college, and find a way to become a teacher. Another one was thinking about going back to his community to get involved in law enforcement. What became really clear to me that day was that while I was one of a long string of visitors all coming in to see these men and women and to say to them, thank you, what was also clear to me was what they also needed to hear in addition to thank you, which they appreciated. It meant a lot to them when people came in to say thank you. What they also had to hear was we still need you. They had to know that when they came home, we saw them not as problems but as assets. And they had to know that when they came home, we still believed in them enough that we were willing to challenge them to continue to find a way to be of service here at home. So when I left the hospital that day, I called two of my friends, both of them disabled veterans. They put in the money from their disability checks. I contributed my combat pay from Iraq. And we used that to start the Mission Continues. And what we do at the Mission Continues is we challenge veterans to come home and find ways to serve and inspire in communities across America. And I want to show you how we take all of the lessons that we've talked about this morning and how we try and put all of them together to change just one life at a time. So this is Anthony Smith, who you're looking at here. Anthony Smith was a major serving in the United States Army Reserve. He was in Iraq when a rocket-propelled grenade came in and took off Anthony's right arm underneath the elbow. Took out most of his right femur, took out a lot of his right hip. He lost his eyesight in his right eye, and he had massive internal injuries. His injuries were actually so severe that when he was on the battlefield, one of the medics tried to revive him several times and could not, and actually pronounced Anthony KIA, killed in action. Confusing, chaotic situation on the battlefield. One of the other medics later went over to check Anthony's dog tags. As they were checking his dog tags, they saw there were some air bubbles coming out of one of his wounds. They thought he might have started breathing again. They started medical treatment again. And 64 days later, Anthony Smith woke up from a medically induced coma. Now you think about your front line for a moment. You think about what it's like as a physician, as a leader, as a community leader, as a family leader. Think with me for a minute about what that front line looks like for Anthony Smith. He wakes up after 64 days and he's literally looking at a different person in the mirror. His career in the United States Army has come to an end. Anthony was in the reserves. His civilian career was he was a chief of police in a small town in Arkansas. His civilian career has now come to an end. And Anthony struggled for a long time. He started to doubt whether or not he was still needed here. He started to doubt whether or not there was still a purpose for him here. What he did, though, was Anthony came back to this place and he decided that he was going to find a way to challenge himself. And he went back to his martial arts instructor. He'd taken some martial arts instruction before he went to Iraq. He went back to his martial arts instructor and he asked him to start training Anthony again. Keep in mind, Anthony Smith had to learn how to take every step again with his right foot. But he found somebody, he found a leader, he found a mentor who actually cared enough about him that he was willing to challenge him, he was willing to push him, willing to push him through pain. So Anthony went through his training, and eventually he got to a place where he earned his black belt. The question for Anthony still remains. The question is, what are you going to do now? How are you going to find a way to continue to serve? And when I first started talking with Anthony Smith, he told me, he said, you know what, I've really enjoyed this martial arts training. Really helpful to me. It's helped me to regain my strength. I'd like to find a way to use this in my next mission in public service. And so what we did at the Mission Continues was we challenged Anthony to become a martial arts and character education instructor. And what you're going to see is how Anthony Smith takes all of these lessons that we've talked about making a change of course of a couple of degrees, about having the courage of perseverance, about having the right friends around you when you accept the challenge, about remembering that other people are counting on you even when things get difficult. And you're going to see how Anthony Smith puts all of these things together in the life that he lives today.
Inspirational stories of soldiers who strive to serve, even after painful injuries have taken them off the battlefield. Jenna, good morning.
Good morning. The soldiers' unconditional service to our country is undeniable. And there's one program that gives these America and these valiant warriors an amazing gift, the chance to continue to serve.
I was on a stretcher, and the priest was trying to talk to me. He started reading me the 23rd Psalms, and I was telling him I'm not dead yet.
Major Anthony Smith is a fighter. When he came home from Iraq with brain damage, missing an arm, a hip, a kidney, and half his vision, this warrior felt he was useless. But he says it was this simple question which kept him from complete despair.
What do you want to do now? How are you going to continue to serve?
Eric Greitens, founder of The Mission Continues, asked it of him. When Greitens returned from his tour in Iraq, he was determined to continue his mission by helping other returning soldiers.
A lot of these men and women have severe post-traumatic stress disorder. They might be dealing with traumatic brain injury. They might be dealing with physical rehabilitation. And some of them, unfortunately, are in places where they're dealing with substance abuse and they're self-medicating.
Greitens challenges them to reconnect with their purpose in life through a fellowship, which finds them jobs and helps them set up their own businesses.
Fine, stand.
For Anthony, his mission is teaching martial arts to more than 200 at-risk kids. Despite his injuries, Anthony earned his black belt in martial arts, ran a triathlon, an Ironman race, and lives like he is not disabled.
The biggest struggle is when you can get past yourself and realize that, there's a reason I'm still alive.
And what he teaches his kids is so much more than merely kicking and punching.
Be polite. Be brave. Respect yourself and others. When you got kids that used to say, yep, no, now they're saying, yes, sir. 1, 2, switch side, 3, 4, 10 push-ups, let's go.
When somebody tries to fight you and they pick on you too much, he teach you, like, when your meditation, to calm down.
One of the things we talk about is patience, right?
When you're at school, you respect yourself of what you're doing, and you respect your adults for what they're telling you when you do it, and you don't say nothing, and you never give up.
When his students' grades and behavior improve, each success is his own.
You got that person where they're supposed to be at, so it makes you feel real good.
This renewed mission is working for more than 1,000 returning soldiers who now have purposeful jobs. They say that while their military service has ended, their service to their country has not.
An Army sergeant who works with Big Brothers Big Sisters. I've got another Army sergeant who works with the Red Cross. I've got a veteran who's working with Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I've got folks who are working with Paralyzed Veterans of America. I think that our fellows represent a great hope for this entire generation of veterans.
For Anthony, helping others and healing himself. So your mission will never end.
It never ends.